Hello everybody and welcome to another one of my epic list videos. This week we are going to be looking at ranking every identity specific ally, which is not something that every hero has, but there are 55 of them, so this is going to be a lengthy list. I have, I guess in a shorter form, ranked every box, but I did late last year, late in 2024, I ranked all the Nemesis minions, which would have been the core set up to Magneto. At this point, we are doing the core set up to the Civil War box. I have not seen the final hero at the time of recording this. We have seen Wonder Man. I think the numbers point to the fact that if they're putting everything in the same way they normally do, Wonder Man doesn't have an identity-specific ally, which is fine because it should have been Beast. And I think if they can't do certain things due to licensing, Beast is probably one of those things, so it's probably all for the better that he's not. Even as I think about it, I feel like another one might have been Rogue. That also falls outside of the licensing, so again, it's probably for the best that, you know, our honorable mention of Wonder Man having Beast is just not an actual thing. So let's get into the actual list, and let's get into the minutia of it, because if you've watched especially the Nemesis one, you know that I want to try to give some kind of definitive way of ranking these characters. It's not just the way I feel about them. It does come down to factors. This time, after I kind of hummed and hawed about it, I realized that I was going to rank all of these on their thematics, so how well they match to that character, to their hero character. Are they a good pair? Was that something that you would come to expect? Their gameplay, a really strong character in this retrospect, or in this respect, would be one where you're building your entire deck around them, or you're planning your entire turn around them, because they just do so much for what your game plan is. Even like a, you know, fairly like an 80% on that is still like one where you look at it, you just go, okay, this gets me what my hero cares about. It might not necessarily drive the entire turn, but this gets me something really good. Like I guess kind of like a Wiccan in Hulkling, I think, is going to kind of fit into that. Or Daytripper does the same thing for you in that sense. Whereas like someone who's a little bit weaker, I would say War Machine. We'll get to him probably. Actually, spoiler alert, we're going to get to War Machine in a pretty short amount of time. I don't feel like he does a lot for Iron Man. He's helpful, but he's not something that I would say that I think fits into the game plan. And then because I love the sidekick archetype. Another factor that I put in there to make this very personal to me is how well I think that they fit into the sidekick archetype. You're either a good candidate for sidekick, or you're not a good candidate, and that was kind of just a binary to get some ranking, some weight there, and then also took into account just what their cost is, like how viable is it for them to be played, because some of them are really cheap, like, you know, kudos to Moon Knight, and then some of them are very expensive, such as, like, you know, Wolverine I think costs 4, Rogue costs 4, although that is variable, and I tried to keep that in mind as I was ranking, you know, characters like that where the cost could go down. And then the last thing, to just sort of help to break up ties, because there were a lot of ties. You can only award so many points, so I looked at my ranking of all of these characters in Pub Meeple or whatever thing that went around a couple months ago. And so I took my ranking of the heroes that these allies are tied to sort of just like the heroes that I love, give that ally an additional boost. And that was just to sort of like help so that there wasn't just a bunch of like, and we have a 6-way tie for number 33. And to sort of break that up and to give them a fair shake. A lot of talking. Actually more talking than I was expecting. I know this is going to be a long video, but hopefully it's going to be a video that people enjoy. You get to hear my thoughts about each one of these characters, but let's not waste any more time and let's get into it. So let's start off the list with my number 55, which is Lockheed. Lockheed is connected to Shadowcat. He is a 2-cost ally with 1 thwart, 1 attack. He is a dragon and X-Men traded. He has 2 health, and then he has the responsibility of, after Lockheed enters play, if you are in solid mass form, deal 2 damage to an enemy. If you are in phased mass form, remove 2 threat from a scheme. So my thought process here is that Lockheed is a fine enough character. I think that in terms of thematics, he is not the first character I would think of if I were to be giving Shadowcat a identity-specific ally. I think he's middle of the road in that respect. I understand why they didn't give him Colossus, although, to be fair, Colossus got Shadowcat. But I also think that I could have said someone like Magic, and it would have made just as much sense. Lockheed is, I think, a decent enough pick. I think he's middle of the road because he is the only character he's ever going to be tied to is Shadowcat. Lockheed is just not the first character I would think of if I were to give a ally specifically to Shadowcat. That said, additionally, I think that I don't weigh him very strong in the gameplay area either. I think that he can be factored in, but I don't base my thought process of a turn around if I'm going to play Lockheed. And he's not a sidekick character, and in all fairness, I don't really rank Shadowcat that high in my own personal ranking, but when it comes down to like just him as an identity-specific ally, he's just not for me, and so that's why he's at my number 55. Moving on to my number 54, we have another character that is maligned in many ways, and it does come down to a bunch of factors, and that is Pip the Troll. Pip the Troll is a 2-cost ally with 1 thwart, 1 attack, 2 health, mystic trait. He has toughness, and while Pip the Troll is in your hand, he gains interrupt. When a player is attacked, spend energy, genius, resources, put Pip the Troll into play under that player's control, and he is from Adam Warlock's pack. So a number of things are kind of being held against him. Thematically, I think he's perfect. I think that Adam and Pip are very strongly connected. He has a very weird ability that I do not really feel like factors into what I'm doing with Adam Warlock. Because of that, I do think that, I guess, it is possible that in a build, he could be a sidekick ally. I think he works better in a multiplayer scenario where you give him to somebody else who's playing leadership and they get to put sidekick on him. But then you've got this situation where he now has 4 hit points and he's doing 1-1. Not really a strong case for being very good at sidekick. So that's why I'm still going to say he's just in a binary. I'm not picking him for sidekick. He's decently playable. I think 2 and 2 is pretty. 2 payment for 2 health, decent. He's got 1-1 stats. Like I feel like you're not playing him to use him. You're playing him one, because you have to, but also just because like he has the ability to like go on under other people's controls. That's pretty cool. Adam Warlock is not my least favorite hero, but he does not rank very highly up in my own personal rankings, and he just lives at number 54. Next up, we have War Machine, and as I alluded to, he does not rank very highly for a number of reasons, and let's get into it. So he is a 4-cost ally. That already hurts him a little bit. 1 thwart, 2 attack, 4 health, shield and soldier traded, and an action of exhaust War Machine and deal 2 damage to him. Deal 1 damage to each enemy. So my thought process here is, thematically, I think he's great. I don't know that there's another hero that I would say should be the ally to Iron Man. That said, he doesn't factor into my game plan at all. I don't think he's, of the 3 characters we've talked about, he easily is the character that I think factors into my game plan the least of Pip, Lockheed, and War Machine. War Machine, I don't like. He is a good example of, I just do not factor him into what I'm doing when I'm playing Iron Man. That said, he does get some points because I do think that he is a reasonable sidekick ally. You give him some extra health, suddenly he can do that Gatling gun ability. You flip back down to Tony, you heal him back up. He's got a chance of doing that. I don't know that that's a strong game plan, but I do think that there is a plan there. I think he's reasonably playable because Iron Man can get a pretty big hand size, and Iron Man is on the lower half of my favorite heroes. War Machine doesn't get much of a boost from that, and so I guess I'll even disclose the fact that basically I have all my heroes ranked on the pub meeple, and the bottom hero got 0 points, then the next 5 basically get a point, the next 5 get 2 points, next 5 get 3 points, up all the way until you get to the top of my list, my favorite heroes. And I think, if I remember correctly, they accumulated 12 points. So, like, that is a weight. But as we will see, that does not necessarily mean that my favorite heroes are going to bump up their allies that much. But War Machine only gets 2 points because Iron Man does not rank up extremely highly in my own personal rankings. All culminating in a pretty bad showing for War Machine at number 53. Next up becomes Wong, who is out of Doctor Strange's pack. He is a 3-cost ally with 1 thwart, 2 attack, 3 health. He has the Mystic trait. And in action of Exhaust Wong, choose to either heal 1 damage from your identity or discard the top card of your invocation deck. That can be super helpful. I do think that does mean that he factors in reasonably well to your game plan. I think that he is a thematic win for Doctor Strange. I don't think he's a good sidekick. I suppose you could make the case that he's going to stick around for a while and you can heal a lot of damage, and what he does not cause him to take damage. But I don't know if that's a good enough case to say that, oh, I want to put sidekick on him. Additionally, I think that he is reasonably playable, like in terms of, like, you know, he costs 3. That's not too bad, but at the same time, like, Doctor Strange is my least favorite hero. Spoiler for the eventual list of my favorite heroes. Doctor Strange at this point in 2025 is my least favorite hero, and that just leaves Wong in a very middling place, and yeah, at my number 52. Next up, we have Agent 13, a 3-cost ally with 2 thwart, 1 attack, 3 health. She has the shield trait, and the response of after Agent 13 enters play, remove 2 threat from a scheme. So my thought process here is she is a thematic win. I do think that she loosely factors into what you're going to be doing. She is very helpful in the fact that Steve can lower, she's out of a Captain America's pack. Steve does help to lower her cost, which means she can come in for 2, and then she can remove 2 threat from a scheme. That can be helpful because you're in alter ego in that sense. If you happen to be in hero form, then you're paying 3 for her. That can still be helpful. Just she comes into play. She basically removes 4 threat with her ability, plus her just natural thwarting. At the same time, she's not a good sidekick ally. She does not read as a good sidekick ally because you want to be playing her over and over again. That can be a perk. You know, throwing in my bias, sidekick is a archetype that I really like. She's not going to be one that I'm going to be throwing in there. It's like costing 3. I think she does a really good job of being playable. And Captain America ranks decently amongst my favorite heroes, which does help her to bump up. At the same time, that does leave her at number 51 on my list. I like her as a character. I think that in the comics she's really cool. I think that she is an interesting ally to have in the game, but she does not rank highly up in my metrics. Next up at number 50, and this hurt me a little bit because my number 50, in terms of all these metrics, and this should show that there is bias, but it's not the most extreme bias, and that is Snow Clone, one of my favorite cards out of Iceman. Snow Clone is a 2-cost ally with null thwarting and 2 attack and 2 hit points. He has the Ice and X-Men traits. It cannot have upgrades attached to it, and Snow Clone takes -1 consequential damage when it attacks an enemy with a frostbite attached. I love the design of this. I suppose at some degree, should I have made a category to factor in designs? Maybe I should have. At the same time, that I think becomes a little too esoteric. That's a little bit too hard to gauge. And even like, you know, my own biases showing up here are going to shift things. But I think Snow Clone is an incredible design. I think that thematically, you know, he does make snow clones. And the fact that it has 0 or no thwart, it cannot thwart, is a flavor win. But I feel like you could pick a lot of other heroes. I mean, you could even pick like the Human Torch, which might have been a licensing issue, but you could pick Spider-Man and probably be a better thematic callback. Yes, he made snow clones in his very first appearance. It is a thing that he does. I think he makes snow clones in the first appearance. I know he makes it in the first 66. Like I can see where the designers are coming from. It is a really cool design. I just don't think that thematically this is the ally I would have picked for Iceman. Gameplay wise, I think that he is strong. I think that he falters a little bit, or snow clones falter a little bit because they are more reliant on what Iceman's doing. So you're not necessarily basing your entire turn around them. You're kind of taking advantage of them. I think that they are very strong from being able to make 2 attack and not take consequential damage. That keeps them alive longer. Unfortunately, they cannot have upgrades attached to them, so they cannot be sidekicks, which is a bit of a setback. I think that costing 2 makes them very playable. It's not a big ask to play them, and they do rank very highly because Iceman is in the middle of my list. Like he is somewhere in, like, I think just falling short of the top 50% of my heroes. I do like Iceman reasonably, and so he does. Snow Clones does gain some points there, but just not enough to crack very high onto the list, and thus leaving him at number 50. I should also say that Snow Clone, Agent 13, and Wong technically were neck and neck, and this is also why my hero ratings did help, because in terms of breaking ties, Snow Clone ranked higher because I happen to like Iceman more than Captain America, who I like more than Stephen Strange. I won't belabor that more as we move through the list, but just know that when there are ties, I did break them by which heroes I like more. Next up on the list at number 49, we have Rogue out of Gambit's pack. A 4-cost ally with 2 thwart, 2 attack, the Aerial and X-Men trait with 3 hit points, and the text of reduce the cost to play Rogue by 1 for each charge counter on your identity. So it is very possible that Rogue will be coming out for free. Let's get into the minutiae here, because I think that Rogue is a thematic home run. I don't think she factors very much into your gameplay. Again, kind of like Snow Clones, she's reactive. She can be very inexpensive to play, which means that in terms of her playability, just as a ally, I do think that she is strong, but I don't think that she is a character that I would say factors into my turns that much. I think that it's like, okay, if I can get her down, I will get her down for 1 or 0, and then I'll do whatever I'm going to do with my charge counters. But for the most part, like, she's not the top of mind. She does gain some ground by being, I think, a decent sidekick ally. I think that she's strong enough that I would consider it, because if you can get her down for free and then you give her additional health, and she has toughness. I forgot about that because it's buried at the bottom of her text. She is going to get a free attack, and being able to deal multiple instances of 2 damage, or being able to remove multiple instances of 2 threat is valuable. So I do think that she does get some benefit from being a sidekick. Playability wise, if you're just playing her like at 4, she's not great. Obviously she varies a little bit. She can play a little bit easier. Gambit is not necessarily one of my favorite heroes, so she doesn't gain much ground there. But I will say that overall I think that she is a decent hero, and actually, or a decent ally. But I would say that I'm a little sad to see just how low she shows up on the list, because I'm gonna feel this way about a lot of heroes probably in the bottom half of the list. Like, I wish I liked them more, or I wish that they were just a better ally. I might like them as a character, I might like them as a card, but they just, in terms of like as an identity specific ally, they don't have the sauce. Moving on to my number 48, we have Nova Prime out of Star-Lord's pack. He is a 5-cost ally with 2 thwart, 3 attack. He has 3 health, the Aerial Nova core traits, and the response of after you play Nova Prime from your hand, defeat a non-elite minion. So this is definitely a ally that thematically doesn't make any sense. I had to go and I did some research into this to just try to understand how much of a history do these characters have together. And I did this with pretty much every hero. I tried to be impartial, to say I don't know the entire history of all these characters. I looked into it. I don't know that these 2 characters have really shared much time in comics. You know, and they both have lengthy histories. From what I can tell, half a dozen issues is they might have shared space on. They did not seem like in my research that they were that overlapped. So I'm not sure what connection Fantasy Flight was trying to make between these two. Now that said, I do think that he does weigh heavily into your game plan, or moderately into your game plan, because that 5 is lessened by Star-Lord's ability, which means that he comes down. He can just defeat a non-elite minion. Doesn't even have to be engaged with you. Just defeats it. So that can be really helpful. It just comes down, defeats a minion. They're just gone, and he gets to do his thing. He has 3 attack. I do think that you are going to factor him into how you play the game. I think that his 3 attack makes him an excellent candidate for being a sidekick. I had not considered that until I was really kind of looking at it and doing the brass tacks. I had not considered the fact that Nova Prime makes a pretty good sidekick. I think that his playability kind of wanes a little bit. Obviously, 5 is a little bit high, but you're probably not going to pay that. That is kind of a setback of Star-Lord is all. His cards are priced in such a way that you're sort of taking into account his ability to reduce them by 3. But you can't do that for everything. So one of your things is going to be reduced. But they're priced in such a way that probably is the only thing you're going to be doing this turn. That said, trying to be fair, I think Nova Prime is decently playable, and Star-Lord ranks up decently well enough that Nova Prime hits my number 48. Moving on to my number 47, we have Hellcat out of She-Hulk's Hero Pack. She is a 3-cost ally with 2 thwart, 1 attack, 3 health, the Avenger trait, and the action of return Hellcat to your hand. That's a pretty unique thing. I think it is helpful because She-Hulk does have a smaller hand, and so if you have the ability to return this to your hand, not only are you kind of keeping your ally alive, this could be your entire turn. You always have that option to attack for thwart for 2, return it to your hand, play her back out, do it again. That is a game plan you have. That's kind of a dead turn in my opinion, but at least that is something that you could do. That said, I think thematically she is strong. She's looking into the history of She-Hulk. I sort of go, okay, I think you could have gone in other directions. At the same time, she's decently thematic for She-Hulk. Game plan wise, she kind of is vanilla. You could give this ally to anybody and they could get the same play pattern out of them. You could return any ally to a hero's hand and they could replay it like Redwing out of Falcons. Kind of the same thing. You're doing a little bit more there, but this is a generic vanilla enough thing that it helps, but it's not core to She-Hulk's general game plan. Sidekick, not a good sidekick. You don't want to put sidekick onto an ally that you're going to return to your hand. Very playable, and She-Hulk ranks pretty highly in my list, and so that does help to bump Hellcat up and at least give her a respectable placing at my number 47. Number 46, and this hurts me because I think this is such a cool design, but it's just not in the cards, and that is Daytripper from the Nightcrawler pack. She is a 2-cost ally with 2 thwart, 2 attack, and 2 health. She has the Mystic trait and the response of, after Daytripper enters play, search your deck and discard pile for a copy of Bamf and attach it to an enemy. Deal 1 damage to each enemy with a copy of Bamf attached. So I wanted to like Daytripper a lot. I really, really wanted to like Daytripper. I think that thematically, she's a good call. I wanted to be fickle, or I wanted to be difficult and say that I think it would have been really funny if Nightcrawler's identity-specific ally was a Bamf, because he has both his Bamf ability, where he does the Brimstone Cloud, and the Onomatopoeia is Bamf, but in a story, Bamfs were also the name of these little creatures that would follow him around. And there was a part of me that thought that would be really funny because the card text on Nightcrawler cares about Bamfs, but what if you actually had 2 different cards that both are named Bamf, kind of in the same way as I Am Groot. They're both named Bamf, so you can interact with them, but actually one of them is an identity-specific ally. That'd be really cool. I'm not going to hold that against it because Daytripper, Amanda Sefton, is crucial to Nightcrawler. I do think that she fits into your game plan if you want to get Bamfs out onto minions, on enemies, and then she comes down and just does a bunch of damage. I think that is something that you will factor into how you are structuring your turn. I don't think she's a strong candidate for being a sidekick, and I don't particularly enjoy Nightcrawler. That just kind of comes down to gameplay, and so all those factors come together to the fact that she is, relatively low ranked. Moving on to my number 45, we have Captain Marvel out of Spider-Woman's hero kit. She is a 4-cost ally with 2 thwart, 2 attack, 3 health. She has the Avenger trait, and after Captain Marvel uses a basic power, draw a card. I think this is a really cool ally to just have around. I think thematically, she's a home run. Spider-Woman and Captain Marvel have had a history that I probably predates the New Avengers, but everything that I know about the two of them, even in the age of the Infiltration and Secret Invasion, still they had a strong relationship. The betrayal there was based on a strong friendship. Like I said, the last 20 years, they've had a very strong friendship. I think before that, going back into the early 2000s, into the 90s, my understanding is they've always been the best of friends. They've always had a connection. So I do think that thematically they make sense. Game plan wise, I think because Spider-Woman wants to be playing events, or wants to be playing cards of multiple aspects, the ability to draw a card every turn, that additional card is just an additional choice that you have. I don't think it is the strongest ally in terms of your game plan, but I do think that she's going to factor into your game plan. You're going to want to get her out. I do think that she is on the more expensive side, so playability kind of lowers down a little bit. And Spider-Woman is not necessarily my favorite hero, so that does leave Captain Marvel, in this spot. But I think that she's a perfectly fine ally. I just think that in terms of the metrics, she just didn't rank up the way that I might have hoped she would. Moving on to my number 44, we have out of Quicksilver's pack, we have Scarlet Witch, a 3-cost ally with 1 thwart, 1 attack, 3 hit points, and the Avenger trait. And with the interrupt of when you use one of Scarlet Witch's basic powers, discard the top card of the encounter deck. For each boost icon discarded this way, Scarlet Witch gets +1 for that power for this use. I think that's a really cool ability. I think that thematically, she is one of the most obvious home runs for Quicksilver. There's a reason why they're both each other's signature allies in their packs. Game plan wise, I think that you factor it in, but so much of Quicksilver, in my opinion, is built around the idea of improving him and using his multiple readies, that Scarlet Witch is not the ally that I would be most concerned with if I was Quicksilver. That ability is cool, but it can be so random that to say I'm going to get multiple readies out of Scarlet Witch, it's but that might not amount to anything. So she's not something that I'm basing my game plan around. Sidekick, I do think is a viable thing, because you give her more hit points, and suddenly using that ability does become more and more viable. She is reasonably priced. She's easy to play. I would say her playability is pretty high. And Quicksilver, I'm lukewarm on. He doesn't break my top 50%, but I do think that I like him reasonable enough. But at the same time, we don't have a strong showing, and so that's where we see Scarlet Witch at my number 44. Moving on to 43, we are getting a little bit predictive and assuming that some of these things are going to remain true, although I think when you start to really kind of look at everything, I think this is a fair enough place to put Wiccan out of Hulkling's pack. Wiccan is a 2-cost ally with 2 thwart, 1 attack, and 2 health. He has the Avenger and Mystic trait, and response of, after you play Wiccan from your hand, search your deck and discard pile for an identity-specific event and add it to your hand. So this is a little bit predictive, because at the time of recording this, Hulkling has not even come out yet. We are still short of Civil War coming out, so keep that in mind when I talk about Moon Knight as well. I hope this turns around quickly. He is a home run in terms of thematics. In terms of game plan, I think that similar to other allies that come into play and basically get you the card type you care about, I think Wiccan is going to be very strong in that aspect for gameplay. I don't really want to make him my sidekick because he has an ability that I would rather redraw him, play him out again, go grab another identity-specific event. Hulkling is very event-focused, and so I do think that having those things is going to be important. Playability, he costs 2. I think he's very playable. And in terms of hero ranking, I can't really say because I haven't played with Hulkling. I think he looks cool. I think Hellcat looks cool as well, or Tigra looks cool. And I predict that this may be one that, given time, could go up in rating because I learned to like Hulkling more. Oh boy, here we are, my number 42, and that is Wolverine out of the Jubilee pack. So this one is probably going to get me into a bit of trouble for a number of reasons. So, okay, I think thematically Wolverine is a great pick. They are, Jubilee and Wolverine are very closely tied. I should have probably factored in, like, if they have a team-up card that almost just gives them a guaranteed high level of thematics. Maybe that even gives them bonus points in thematics. Wolverine, I think, is a wonderful thematic pick. I think in terms of gameplay... Oh, I didn't even read him. I'm sorry. Wolverine is a 4-cost ally with 1 thwart, 3 attack, and that comes with 2 consequential damage, and 4 hit points. He is an X-Men traded, and his attacks gain piercing. And he has the response of, after you change to Alter Ego, heal 3 damage from Wolverine. I think that with the way that Jubilee goes to Alter Ego, this is a reasonably good game plan card. You are going to factor this in because Jubilee, you're not attacking with Jubilee. He deals 3 damage. That's pretty good. And the fact that he heals back up when you go to Alter Ego, that's pretty good too. I think that he makes a good sidekick ally. It's both for comedy and for what he does. You give him some additional health, so suddenly that 2 consequential damage is getting you a little bit further. You switch to Alter Ego, you heal 3 damage on him. Maybe you heal up with Jubilee. You wipe all the damage off of him. I think that's really good. He's moderately playable. I think that with Jubilee, you want to be playing a lot of cards, and Wolverine costing 4 is a bit expensive. Additionally, Jubilee is not one of my favorite heroes, and so that does leave Wolverine, unfortunately, a little low. This is a hero that I could see going up in my rankings over time. I just become more content with Jubilee, and so by proxy, Wolverine will go up in the rankings. But at the same time, like I saw Wolverine was in the low 40s, and I was like, oh no, and then I had to remember that we were talking about the ally and not the hero. And so that kind of like levels it out. But yeah, unfortunately, Wolverine sits at my number 42. Moving on to my number 41. And that is Mockingbird out of Hawkeye's pack. So Mockingbird is a 3-cost ally with 2 thwart, 2 attack, 3 hit points, the Avenger and Shield trait, and an interrupt of, when the villain initiates an attack against you, spend 1 resource of any type and return Mockingbird to your hand. Prevent all damage from this attack. I think that Mockingbird is a thematic home run. There is just about nobody else that I would put with Hawkeye other than Mockingbird. I think in terms of gameplay, because he has such low health, this is a godsend. Just being able to return this to your hand and prevent all that damage is tremendous. But by extension, because the game plan gels so well with what Hawkeye's trying to do and returns back to your hand, just like Hellcat, you don't want to give her sidekick. That said, 3 cost, middle of the road in terms of playability. Because you can play her over and over again, I think that she plays really well. I will say that I didn't factor this in, but this does mean that you don't get to have Mockingbird, the basic ally. This weighs more in terms of the Nick Fury ally, but that is one to keep in mind because Mockingbird is a pretty good staple card, especially early on. And that is something that probably should be factored in. You cannot play a staple card because you already have a unique character with that name in your deck. That said, Hawkeye is not one of my favorite characters. Sorry to all the Hawkeye people out there, but he doesn't rank up very highly for me, and that leaves Mockingbird at number 41. Moving on to number 40, we have Miss Marvel out of Nova's pack. She is a 3-cost ally with 1 thwart, 1 attack, 3 hit points. She is a champion and inhuman traded. Oopsie, that's not accurate anymore. It is accurate to our game, not in terms of the lore. Hero response: after you play an event, exhaust Miss Marvel and deal 1 damage to her. Return that event to your hand. So I think in terms of design, really, really cool. In terms of thematics, Nova and Miss Marvel share a reasonable amount of space in the comics, but almost exclusively because they are part of the Champions. Obviously, that is part of the theme of the wave we were talking about, so I don't want to discount that. At the same time, I don't know who else I would have put with Nova, but really you could have picked any of the Champions and probably made a reasonable argument to have any of them. I do think that Miss Marvel probably pairs decently with Nova, and so I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. It's not going to get my full endorsement in terms of thematics, but I can see what they're going for. Game plan wise, Nova cares a lot about events. Being able to buy these back is really interesting. I think that does make her a good sidekick ally. There's a world where she is the Identity Specific ally for Carol, and Carol is the Identity Specific ally for her. And that's not the world we live in, but I really would love that. I've played variants where you take an Identity-Specific ally and you move it to a different hero pack, just in terms of like the lore, and that is one that I've enjoyed. She works really well there. She works very, very well there. Like I already covered this, she's a good sidekick ally. You're dealing damage to yourself to return events to your hand. She is reasonably playable. And the hero ranking, Nova is not one of my favorite heroes. He does rank reasonably well in terms of my personal ranking, so that does leave Miss Marvel at number 40. Moving on to my number 39, we can just scoot over just a little bit and go look at Brawn out of Ironheart's pack. Brawn is a 4-cost ally with 2 thwart, 3 attack, 3 hit points. The champion and gamma traits, and while Brawn is exhausted, he gains resource, generate a mental resource, limit once per phase. Oh boy, where do we start with this? Well, first of all, the only reason why this outranks Miss Marvel is because I happen to like Ironheart a lot more than I like Nova. So just in terms of like tiebreakers, they were tied. We peel back the curtain a little bit, they were tied. But here's the thing. Brawn does not make any sense for Ironheart. Ironheart already has the problem with the fact that she is a little bit of a loner, but I don't think that she really shares much of a connection with Brawn. I looked for a long time trying to understand if there was just some point in time when these characters had more of a close friendship or a relationship, maybe not a romantic relationship, but just anything. I couldn't find it. I don't know what. I'm not saying that like it was a bad pick. I'm just because they're both champions, but I don't see them as a thematic duo make sense. Game plan wise, this is one where you're sort of just happy to have the mental resource. It's not something that in all my games with Ironheart, and it's not like I'm an Ironheart like aficionado, but I've played a reasonable amount of games. Like I've played a dozen, maybe 18 or 24, so 24 games with Ironheart. Brawn is never something I factor in. It's just something nice to have. He is a reasonably good sidekick, I think. I don't think I've ever gone down that route. I've played a lot of sidekick decks. I don't know that I've ever made him a sidekick, but that 3 attack is really good. The only thing is, like I said, he's not much of a game plan because once Ironheart's on unlocked, you don't really care what else you're doing. Not great playability wise. I think being in Ironheart's pack makes him a little bit more likely that you're going to be able to do this with 2, maybe 3 cards out of your hand. You got some double resources and stuff. I don't believe her resource cards in her pack are double resources, so he's decent enough to play. He would have been much farther down on this list if it wasn't for the fact that I think Ironheart is a pretty kick-ass character, and so that is the redeeming factor. I like Ironheart a lot. That raises Brawn up. This might be one of the most like incongruent examples. I think of 1 or 2 other ones that are going to be a little incongruent on this list, but Brawn gets redeemed by the fact that I really like Ironheart. Moving on to my number 38, and oh look, there it is. There's one of my examples. Okay, so my number 38 is Wasp out of Ant-Man's kit. Wasp is a 3-cost ally with 2 thwart, 2 attack, 3 hit points, has the Aerial and Avenger trait, and the hero responsive after Wasp enters play, deal 2 damage to an enemy if you are in giant form, or remove 2 threat from a scheme if you are in tiny hero form. Oh boy, okay. I went into this assuming that, well, here's a spoiler for Ant-Man. Both Ant-Man and Wasp are thematically low. And you might be a little shocked by that, because one would think Ant-Man and Wasp are very strongly linked. And if we were talking about Hank Pym and Janet Van Dyne, these would be very thematic. I don't think Scott Lang and Nadia Van Dyne have shared a panel. I looked. I tried to figure out if there was something I was overlooking. Again, we are going with a certain continuity. Marvel Champions is sort of its own continuity, but I do think that at the core of it, a lot of this needs to be based on the comics. And in the comics, these two characters I don't think have ever met. I don't think so. So they are very low thematically. Gameplay-wise, I do think that in terms of what you're trying to do with Ant-Man, Wasp is something to be considered. Not strongly. It's not the thing I'm basing my entire turnaround, but the fact that, you know, for a cost of 3, you get a 2/2 ally, and it's going to be doing something for you is important, is something to factor in. I don't consider Wasp to be a good sidekick ally, and I think that her playability is reasonably strong. The thing that really pushes her forward and really helped her playability is the fact that I absolutely love Ant-Man, and that redeemed her so much. And so I think that at the end of the day, being able to say that she is my number 38 it's low on the list. It really is. But at the same time, I do think that in terms of, like, I love Ant-Man, and so it does make sense that she does kind of get to move up a couple spots, because when I'm playing Wasp, that means I'm playing Ant-Man, and I love Ant-Man. Moving on to my number 37, and this is sort of a called shot in terms of just trying to, like, figure out where this ally is going to fall. But we have Moon Knight. Moon Knight is a 1-cost ally with 2 thwart, 2 attack, 3 hit points. He has the Avenger trait and the Force responsive. After Moon Knight enters play, search the encounter deck and discard pile for a minion and put it into play engage with you, stun and confuse that minion. That's actually a pretty cool line of text. I actually went into this assuming that this was a very weird thematic choice. But the more I looked into it, the more I realized that these two characters share a lot of history, and I feel like it's much more than just like being on the Midnight Suns. I think these characters actually have a pretty reasonable amount of history, dating back pretty far. I think for the most part, if a character has had a relationship, if there's a relationship between the two characters in question that existed in the 90s, reasonably to say that most of these characters, besides like Miss Marvel and Ironheart, a lot of these characters have existed for over 30 years. And if you have a history that goes back that far, even if it's something that someone like me who doesn't know a lot about Tigra or Moon Knight in terms of what they've done in the modern sense, I don't know that I would have connected them. But when you look back at it and you realize that these characters have actually had a history that dates back almost 40 years, then I think that's thematically pretty strong. Game plan wise, I also think this is pretty good. It's not the thing that I would factor in the most as I'm going about my day, but the fact that he goes and he minion searches for you, he's going to be able to set you up pretty well. And I think the fact that he's going to stun and confuse a minion means that because this doesn't care a lick about elite, you can go grab an elite minion, you can stun, you can confuse it, it's going to be incapacitated for a while you develop your game plan. I think that in terms of just being a 1-cost ally with 2/2 stats, that sounds like a really good candidate for being a sidekick. I think playability, I don't know how much more playable you can get. He only costs 1. And again, this is I gave out a little bonus nibble of points to Tigra for my likability to it. this one's the one that could jump up highly if I were to do this list again in a year or two. But yeah, I think reasonably good hero, and I don't scoff at putting him at number 37. Moving on to number 36, we have Shadowcat out of Colossus' kit. She is a 3-cost ally with 2 thwart, 2 attack, 3 hit points, has the X-Men trait, and Shadowcat ignores the guard and patrol keywords and any crisis icons in play. So Shadowcat is thematic home run. Game plan, I think, is moderately good. I think that she fills in some of the gaps where Colossus kind of needs somebody who can be reliably thwarting the main scheme, not having to worry about. When she's in your hand, you're going to consider how you're going to play her. She's not core to what Colossus is doing, but I think that she does factor in. I think that she is reasonable enough at being a sidekick to get the sidekick bonus. She's reasonably playable, and I think the one thing that holds everything back is that Colossus is not my favorite hero. And so I think that you get a reasonably good ally that just kind of falters a little bit because I don't love playing Colossus, and so that does diminish Shadowcat's impact in the game for me. Moving on to number 35, we have Iron Man out of War Machine's pack. He is a 3-cost ally with 2 thwart, 2 attack, 3 hit points. He has the Avenger trait and the response of, after Iron Man enters play, search your deck and discard pile for a tech upgrade and add it to your hand, shuffle your deck. So right off the bat, we kind of covered this with when we were talking about War Machine. Iron Man is a perfect thematic pick for War Machine. In this context, I think that there is no other person that I would put in this spot. For Iron Man, you could sit there and probably start to go, okay, there are other heroes that I might pick, but for War Machine, it's Iron Man. In terms of game plan, Iron Man falls into that category where he is getting you the kinds of things that you want for your deck. He's getting you tech, the stuff that War Machine has that is tech. This is going out of its way. It's getting you that. You're able to then factor that into how you're playing your game. I think that he is a card that is going to be crucial to what you're doing. I think that he is so crucial to searching through your deck and discard pile for what you need that he's not a good sidekick candidate for me. That does hurt him a little bit. I think that he is, he's cost 3, so he's moderately playable. The setback here is that War Machine does not rank highly amongst my list. I think if I were to really dedicate more time to playing him, I do think that War Machine could very well move up a little bit in my rankings, but he does kind of fall in the lower half of my list, and so that does hinder Iron Man in terms of just being an ally. Again, like Shadowcat, he doesn't factor into my general meta of playing Marvel Champions because he's under a hero that I don't get a lot of reps in with. And so, yeah, that does leave Iron Man at his current placement of number 35. Moving on to number 34. And this is kind of a toss-up with Iron Man, but I do like this character more in terms of his playability. So we're going to be going with Blue Marvel. He is a 3-cost ally with 2 thwart, 2 attack, 3 hit points. He has the Aerial and Avenger traits, and the hero response of, after Blue Marvel enters play, change energy forms. And that is not a forced response, so that is good, because you don't always want to do that. You've worked pretty hard to get yourself into an energy form. You'd hate to flop just because you played Blue Marvel. But Blue Marvel and Spectrum, Spectrum's kit is where you would find Blue Marvel, they are very strongly linked. I think they are a wonderful thematic tie there. I do think in terms of gameplay, very similar to Iron Man. Actually, they rank... Wow. And now that I look at the point spread, Blue Marvel and Iron Man might as well be neck and neck here. I think that Blue Marvel is very crucial to your game plan. He is another way to manipulate your energy form that is important to Spectrum. That is something that Spectrum, I think, hinders her a little bit, is if you don't have a good way to be messing with your forms, she can just sort of be very lame duck. He is one of the characters I feel like is maybe flirting the most with being sidekick viable, and I'm gonna fall on the side saying he's not sidekick viable. I do think that there could be a case enough to say that Blue Marvel wants to come into play, get shuffled back in and redrawn so that you have another way to manipulate your energy form. At the same time, I do think that like if he comes down and changes it once, you're kind of golden, and you're kind of okay with keeping Blue Marvel out, doing these things, trying to take advantage of just his body, make him a sidekick. I do think that that on a different day, it's a coin flip, and that he could very well be pushed into sidekick status. That said, Spectrum is very close to War Machine, and they're both characters that I would love to love more, but they just fall short, and they're just not my favorite characters. They're just outranked by so many characters nowadays that unfortunately that leaves Blue Marvel at my number 34. Moving on to my number 33, and this is a card that I actually am surprised got this high. There are a number of factors. I do not necessarily care for this design and such. I will only say that about the ally. I will not say that about the hero. Winter Soldier is a 4-cost ally with 2 thwart, 2 attack, 4 health, has the Avenger and Spy traits, and the text of reduce the cost to play Winter Soldier by 1 for each preparation you control. Now that can be very high. You can very easily have 4 preparations out, and this is free. That does help his playability. That said, I get that Winter Soldier and Black Widow probably share a lot of overlapping time in the lore in the comics. When I first learned about Black Widow as a hero, or as a hero pack, did not peg Winter Soldier as who they were going to make her signature ally. I actually would have been more in favor of her not having a signature ally than Winter Soldier. I've grown to accept it. I've grown to accept that the two of them have a pretty dedicated history, and that is, you're playing fair, but I did not consider this to be the most thematic pairing you can have. Gameplay wise, I think that he, very similar to Rogue, whenever you're doing cost reduction, it's more of like, yes, this is factored into your game plan, but he's not progressing your game plan. He's just kind of reacting to your game plan. And so that's reasonably okay. I do think that because we're not looking for him to come into play multiple times, he is a pretty good candidate for sidekick. I think that giving him that additional health and that additional way to kind of recover health makes it so that 2 and 2 is going to get used pretty healthily. Playability, like I already said, he could very well come in for 0, but you do have to be realistic and realize that he might come into play for 4, and that's a problem. Black Widow does rank up pretty well in my rankings, so that does give Winter Soldier a bit of a boost. And yeah, at the end of the day, I'm actually a little surprised. This was one of those characters that when everything shook out, placing him at number 33 was a little bit higher than I think I would have put him if I was just doing this on gut reaction. But you know, the points don't necessarily lie, and I think 33 is a fine place for him to be. Moving on to my number 32, and that is Angel out of the Psylocke pack. Angel is a 3-cost ally with 1 thwart, 2 attack. He has the Aerial and X-Force traits, and he has 3 hit points. And the response of, after you play Angel from your hand, ready your identity. Where do I begin with Angel? I think that in terms of thematics, there is enough history between these characters to say this is a thematic pairing that is okay. In terms of game plan, I don't think this factors into what Psylocke is trying to do. It's another one of those, like, it's nice to have. Like Brawn. Like, yeah, sure, cool. Psylocke, to me, is so tied to her blades that readying her identity definitely does factor into what she's trying to do, but this might as well just be this is just nice to have. It's not crucial to your game plan, in my opinion. Sidekick, I don't think I would make him my sidekick. I don't think he has the stats for it, and I would almost rather just burn him up and let him be another ready later. His playability is pretty good, and what really redeems him is that Psylocke has spiked so much in my ratings in the last year that she's gone from a character that I didn't love to a character that I think probably falls into my top 10. If not, maybe the top 15. But safe to say, being affiliated with Psylocke really helped Angel in this respect and put him at my number 32. Next up at number 31, we have the Black Panther ally, Shuri. A 2-cost ally with 1 thwart, 1 attack, and 3 health. She has the Genius and Wakanda traits, and the responsibility of after Shuri enters play, search your deck for an upgrade card and add it to your hand, then shuffle your deck. So right off the bat, I don't think it's any question that she is the most thematic choice you could make. I guess the other option would be Storm, but I'm not going to consider that only because while Storm is definitely linked to Black Panther in this time period, I understand that access to the X-Men is in a world, okay, let's just say in a world where the X-Men are completely on the table. I think once you know the success of the game, you could sit there and go, okay, is Storm a better thing in the core set? Possibly. I think that with what they have, with what the choices they can make, I think Shuri is the most thematic choice you can make. I think for gameplay-wise, she's an absolutely stellar choice because she is playing into exactly what T'Challa wants to do. He wants to get his upgrades out. We kind of see the same thing with his ally for Shuri, his representation for Shuri. And so, yeah, I think they both play into the gameplay really well. She's not someone that I want to make a sidekick, though, which does bump her down a couple points in terms of just how I'm evaluating all these characters. The extra health is not doing anything because you want her to be going in and out of play pretty regularly. I think that she is a very capable, very playable card. She only costs 2. She's not getting in the way. And I would put Black Panther at middle of the road in terms of where I see him as a hero. I think that he's a hero that I want to like more, but I just has never really connected with me. And that just that leaves Shuri at the number 31 position. Coming in number 30 is a pretty big deal, and that is Vivian, a 2-cost ally with 1 thwart, 1 attack, 2 hit points, the Android and Champion trait. And while you are in tangible mass form, Vivian gets +2 thwart. While you are in dense mass form, you get +2 attack. And this is a wildly different case, I will definitely say. So I would say that Vivian is a middle-of-the-road choice for Vision. And I say that because the immediate gut reaction for me is that Scarlet Witch should be his identity-specific ally. Now, with where they decided to go with Vision, the version that they decided to go with, the era they decided to go with, yeah, you go with Vivian. But I think classically most people would assume that Scarlet Witch and Vision are connected, and the fact that they actually don't even really play that well together, like there's not a tremendous amount of overlap that makes it so that they are a pair of heroes that play well together. I also think just speaks volumes to the fact that that's not the direction that Fantasy Flight decided to go in. That said, I still would say that I feel like Vivian is the second in line for an identity-specific ally for the Vision. I think gameplay-wise, she is very interconnected. I think she is a critical part of his hero kit. I think that she's doing a lot of good there. And I would also say that she's a good sidekick ally. She's the kind of ally that I want to give sidekick to because depending on what trait is important to me, she would then have 4 hit points and she would have 3 in whatever stat I'm currently worried about. She's very playable. The only thing that holds Vivian back, because I think in a different world, if you were just going based solely off of rating the characters just in a vacuum, you're not really worried about the hero, she would rank very highly. But I don't personally rank Vision that high in my general ratings. He falls just in line with where I put Black Panther, in middle of the road, not too bad, not too great. Just I don't like Vision. He's not my gameplay, and that hurts Vivian overall, which leaves her at number 30, which I think also speaks volumes as to like just how partial and impartial and objective and subjective this list definitely is. But yes, that leaves Vivian at number 30. Next up at number 29, we have Cyclops' identity-specific ally, and that is Phoenix Jean Grey. So she is a 3-cost ally with 2 thwart, 2 attack, 3 hit points, the Psionic and X-Men traits, and the responsibility of after Phoenix enters play, choose a Cyclops card in your discard pile and add it to your hand. So Unquestionably, she is thematic. She is the top choice that I would put with Cyclops. It is debatable, I suppose, that you could say Emma Frost. They were romantically linked for most of the last 20 years. And so I do think that there is a fair comparison to make there. I would say that anybody that's coming in outside of the comics that doesn't know, they're not going to link her to Cyclops. They're going to link Phoenix. And so I think even though we are playing in a mostly taking everything from the comic space, I think that it would be difficult to make a really strong case that you do a Cyclops hero, you don't give him Phoenix. I do think that the gameplay is pretty strong. I think that this is something that, because we are looking to any Cyclops card, that means that she can help you with whatever you need. Obviously, you're mostly looking for upgrades because you want to put the temporary upgrades onto minions to do stuff with, but also maybe you just want an attack event or something. There is a very strong just appeal to what a Cyclops player is looking to do. Getting into the more biased things, she's not somebody that I would personally want to make my sidekick ally. She has strong stats, but I want her to be going in and out of play a lot. Now, granted, you are paying 3. You do have to equate in the fact that that is a reasonable amount of your hand. If you're going to get Phoenix into play, maybe you do want to put sidekick onto them just to keep her around longer. That said, I don't believe that her stats and what her ability is really warrant that, but that is a case could be made. She is one of those kind of on the bubble, because if you have 2/2 stats, you're probably at least going to be in the running for viable sidekick ally. But the real thing that kind of like puts her at number 29 is the final little bit of ranking that I would consider Cyclops to also be basically tied for my favorability amongst actually all the ones we've talked about in the last few rounds. Black Panther, Vision, and Cyclops, I would say all cluster together in about the same amount of favorability. And so that does place Phoenix at number 29. Next, let's get into my number 28, which is out of the Wolverine pack, and that is Jubilee. She is a 2-cost ally with 1 thwart, 1 attack, 2 hit points in the X-Men trait. And the response of after Jubilee enters play, choose an enemy until the end of the phase. While Wolverine or Jubilee is making a basic attack against an enemy, they get +2 for that attack. Jubilee is hard. Actually, in my mind, if you would have asked me where does Jubilee rank, I think that she would have ranked below some of these other heroes just based on a gut reaction. But as the numbers were coming in, as we were crunching it, as we were trying to dissect this as much as possible, she does outrank a lot of these other allies because I think she is very strongly thematic. I think that she's not great for the gameplay because she can only really affect 1 turn, but that does mean that you're getting the boost for Wolverine and you're getting a boosted attack of up to 3 for Jubilee for that 1 turn. That said, because of how much she is dependent on that responsibility, she's not a good sidekick ally. Ironically, Wolverine and Jubilee are on the art for that card. She's not a good candidate. I think she's very playable. I think she's very reasonably costed. And the saving grace for her and why she rises above some of the other heroes that we've talked about in this category is that I happen to like Wolverine an awful lot. He is easily in my top 50%. I would say he's probably a little bit higher than that, but she ranks highly because I rank Wolverine highly, and so there's a higher chance that I'm actually going to get her to the table because there's a much higher chance that I'm actually going to play her. Moving on to my number 27, we have out of Magic's kit, we have Colossus, and he is a 3-cost ally with 2 thwart, 2 attack, 3 hit points. He has the X-Men trait and toughness. With an interrupt of when an ally attacks you, play Colossus from your hand, paying his resource cost, and declare him as a defender without exhausting him. So, let's talk this through. So I think that he is very thematic for Magic. Cases could be made that other characters could be her identity-specific ally. I think it would have been really cool to have Shadowcat, but again, like Cyclops, I think that this gets a little bit more into the weeds because I think Magic is a character that even if you know her from the New Mutants movie, most people don't know Magic as well as a lot of these other characters. Magic really came into her own. She came back into comics in the late 2000s, and she became a prominent part of Cyclops' X-Men team during things like Schism and moving into the Phoenix Five. And my envision of how she works in Krakoa is that she's a fairly prominent character. So I think that from a comic book reader perspective, she's going to be very well known. I would also say that unless you really get into the weeds, Cyclops is going to be her pack one, pick one every time. If you get into the weeds, if you know a little bit more about the comics, if you're a little bit more of a reader, you could say, I can make a case for other characters. But that said, very similar to Cyclops and Phoenix, I think Colossus, this is Colossus's place. And so I'm not even going to debate the thematics. In terms of gameplay, I would actually say that this is a good effect to have. He's coming into play. He's protecting magic. But magic cares so much about other things. And while she can deploy Colossus from the top of her deck as if it was in your hand, I don't feel like that is really doing what Magic is looking to do. In fact, he's got a wild resource on him. So actually, the best place for Colossus is kind of on the top of your deck. Now, granted, yes, that also means that a good place for him is the top of your deck, where you can then play him as if he was in your hand. There can be a lot of kind of nuancing of what Colossus does for the gameplay of Magic. But I don't know that I play Magic fairly frequently. I don't know that I'm basing my turn around Colossus. Mainly because to put Colossus on top of your deck, unless you have Limbo so that you can set it up from your hand, put him on top, basing your turn around what you might draw into and what might end up on the top of your deck and hoping that it's Colossus is a wild prospect. And that I don't feel like that's anything that I've ever factored in. What if the sixth card in my deck is Colossus? So when I draw back up to 5, Colossus is the top card. That's not a line of thinking, and maybe I'm wrong for thinking that, but that's not a line of thinking that I have. Additionally, he's a very strong ally. He's an ally that I happen to like an awful lot. I'm not going to make him my sidekick. I would much prefer to get him back into my discard pile so that I could redraw him or what have you, than to make him my sidekick. Playability wise, he is a little cumbersome, but I think that at 3, he can make it happen. You're kind of wrapping your entire turn around that, especially because to play him from your hand to make this defense, it does save you, but that burns up a lot of your stuff. And granted, her curve is pretty low. And if you're playing on the top of your deck, that is reducing it by 1 again. So you're not completely beholden to playing Colossus and then basically passing the rest of your turn. You can probably still salvage something. At the same time, I do feel like he is cumbersome. He is basically, during the villain phase, you're dedicating yourself to this is your plan. That's going to keep you alive, but that is restrictive to what you're trying to do. That said, I think that Magic is one of my favorite heroes in the game. She is maybe not top 10. There's so many heroes now. She's maybe not top 10, but she's pretty high up there. So I would, in terms of favorability, Colossus is going to see more play for me because he is a hero that is going to see more play for me. And that's why, that's my case for Colossus. Next up, let's talk about my number 26, which is Lady Sif. A 4-cost ally with 2 thwart, 2 attack, 3 health, the Asgard trait, and the response of after Lady Sif enters play, ready Thor or Odin's son, which I believe now would just say ready your identity. I question if Lady Sif is really the most thematic choice for Thor, and I feel like I am struggling enough to really make a strong case for her that I could not give her the full points for thematics. Gameplay wise, she's super helpful. I will base my entire turn around her, kind of because you have to. With her cost, she's very cumbersome to play. She is your entire turn. But because you are hopefully having 3 attack, this means you get an attack for 3, you play her, you ready back up, you make another attack for 3, she can thwart for 2, which for Thor is fantastic. Again, this takes those situations where I am down and out, and Lady Sif can completely turn that around. She is definitely a strong contender for gameplay. What I will say is that she is probably not the best sidekick ally, but also I don't think that Thor is a hero that really could support sidekick very well. I think that there's so much going on. His hand size is small enough that I feel like to use the sidekick package, to do side by side, to do suiting up, I don't think that those are cards that necessarily gel well with Thor. I think he can be a very good leadership hero. I don't think a sidekick is the archetype for him. And I think that mainly starts with the fact that I don't think that Lady Sif, I don't think she's a great candidate for sidekick. Playability wise, I would say she's definitely the most difficult. She's probably the most difficult identity-specific ally to play because she's in a hero that has a very small hand size. And I think it's no question that Thor is one of my favorite heroes. She's going to get a huge bump from that. I think that you take a rather middle-of-the-road ally, and she bumped up a few points just by being from one of my favorite heroes. That said, she's still in the bottom half of the list, I believe, because we were talking about... How many are we talking about now? 55, so she barely cracks the upper 50% of the list. And I think that if nothing else, that does show that while the list does have some bias, it definitely does not favor purely my favorite heroes over everything else. There is a method to the madness, and that's why she ends up at my number 26. Next up, let's talk about my number 25, which is out of the Spider Hero Kit, and that is VEN Pound M, or Venom. So Venom is a 4-cost ally with 1 thwart, 1 attack, and 3 hit points. Has no traits, which I actually think is very interesting. And the special, the star on both of her basic powers of Venom gets +1 thwart and +1 attack for each sim counter on her. Hero response: after Venom enters play, place 1 sim counter on her for each resource generated by Spider Suit's sync ratio ability to pay for her. And that ability is just that you are able to use your user interface cards or whatever. You can use the resources on your identity specific cards to generate resources towards that. So if you happen to use all of your stuff to play out Venom, then she comes into play and she just has, I guess she becomes a 5/5. That's pretty awesome. So thematically, I think that she's about as strong a case for this for Spider as possible, because Spider does not have the wealth of comic appearances, especially you have to take into account that this hero came out in 2022. They probably designed her over the course of like 2020 into maybe 2021, but I would say with most card games, you're going to give it about 2 years. So that also cuts out an entire 2 years of development of just making Spider into a comic book character. You lose a lot of time. You could very well make the case that if you were to open it up to the entire Spider-Verse, there might be another hero or another ally that would work. But I think within her own universe, Venom is about all you're going to get. And this is also coming from the perspective that I'm not going to pretend to know a whole lot about Spider, but at the same time, I think that of her history, Venom is actually a pretty recent or a pretty involved part of it. Gameplay-wise, I think that she's okay. This is more dependent on the fact that Spider is making Venom better versus Lady Sif was making Thor better. And so that's kind of how I split those hairs, is that Venom is good when Spider is good. So you are basing your turnaround playing her, but I don't know that once she's in play, she's not furthering what Spider's doing. She's just going to be a very strong ally. That said, what definitely gives her additional points is this is a ally that I definitely want to make my sidekick. If I can get her points up to 3 or more, she's a wonderful sidekick ally because she's just going to stay in play forever. She's hopefully going to regenerate some of that health just through gameplay, and Venom is just going to be a very, very strong ally. And so yeah, great for sidekick. I would say that she's actually probably very prohibitively expensive. Once you're online, it's really easy to play her because you just have the ability to use your sync ratio ability. But the Spider only has 2 hand size naturally, I believe. She is prohibitively difficult to play, but I think that ingrained into Spider is a way to make this a viable thing to play. I will say that I don't consider Spider to be an extremely powerful hero. I am coming back around. Spider was probably in my lower 5, lower 10 for a long time, and she's kind of risen up. But at the same time, in the grand scheme of things, I don't rank Spider too highly, which is what results in Venom falling to number 25 for me. Next up, we're not even going to leave the wave. We are moving over to Spider-Ham and Captain Americat, a 3-cost ally with 2 thwarts, 2 attack, and 3 hit points, and the cartoon trait. And a response of, after Captain Americat enters play, give someone a high 5. Place 1 toon counter on your identity and shuffle 1 Spider-Ham card from your discard pile into your deck. This is another difficult one, similar to Venom, where it's like, okay, well, I mean, what kind of publication history does Spider-Ham have? He has much longer history. I believe he came around in the 70s. But who are you going to team him up with? Of course, in every universe, you're going to find the Captain America variant, and you're just going to go with that. So thematically, I'm just going to give it to them. Gameplay-wise, middle of the road, but I do think that giving yourself a toon counter is relevant. Like you need to kind of work for that in other ways for Spider-Ham, and shuffling a card back into your deck isn't the worst thing in the world. That said, I do want to avoid Sidekick with him because I would rather he just go in and out of play and I can play him over again. He's reasonably playable. You're not basing your entire turn around playing him, but you know, at that point you are dedicating 4 cards from your hand, probably, unless you're playing with the team building exercise. Then I suppose maybe he gets a little bit easier. I think that's always a viable thing, is how if these allies are sharing a trait with you, which they probably are, team building exercise is always going to be relevant. I rank Spider-Ham fairly highly. I think he's in my top 50%, so that does also raise Captain Americat up a little bit. He's more likely to see play because he's in a hero that I'm more likely to play. And at the end of the day, there's not a lot more to say, but I do kind of like Captain Americat. He's funny, and he's going to make an effect on the board when he comes into play. So that's all I can ask for. Next up, we have Ant-Man, who is out of the Wasp pack. A 4-cost ally with 2 thwart, 2 attack, and 3 hit points, the Avenger trait, and the text of, while you are in giant hero form, Ant-Man gets the giant trait and gets +1 attack, and while you are in tiny hero form, Ant-Man gets the tiny trait and gets +1 thwart. As we talked about with Wasp, and if you happen to just skip around, here's what we talked about with Wasp. I don't believe that Nadia Van Dyne and Scott Lang have ever shared a page together. I looked into it. I combed through both of their fandom pages to make sure that I wasn't overlooking something. These heroes are kind of only linked in their superhero monikers alone. I don't believe they've shared much of any screen time or any page time with each other. So thematically, these don't make sense. Gameplay wise, I think that they're pretty strong. I think you would base what you're doing with Scott, the ally, around what you're doing. Or you would base what you're doing with Wasp around what you're doing with Scott Lang. He is going to come into play. He's going to be basically, Wasp is a hero that I think she has 2 different hero forms, but I think you're building towards one of them when you play her. And so Ant-Man is just going to be an extension of that. So I do think that in terms of what he's doing, it's strong. I think that also makes him into a very good sidekick ally because he's going to come down, he's going to have 3 in the relevant stat, and he's going to be able to help you. Now, if you do happen to need to switch to another stat, or if you need to switch to your other form, then he's going to be able to help you with that too. But I would also say that in giant form, Wasp is kind of better at thwarting, or she can hit multiple sides. She can hit the main scheme, she can hit side schemes. I mean, she can do the same thing with attack. She can split up her attack. But I do think that in tiny form feels like the more aggressive form for Wasp. And so I think that you look at the cards in her kit, it points to the fact that you want to be more aggressive. And if I were in aggression, I would probably be spending most of my time in tiny form. So to help that out, giant form, which I would say, like I just said, probably better at thwarting, you get the bump in attack. Tiny form, probably better at attacking, you get the bump in thwarting. So he is sort of helping you to pay off the setbacks of the form you're in, which again, I think makes him a very good sidekick ally. He's a little cumbersome to play, but at the same time, Wasp is one of my favorite heroes, so he's going to get a bump up. And I think that also speaks to the fact that Wasp was so low on the list. Her interaction was so low, even though I think I favor Ant-Man over Wasp. Ant-Man, the ally, wins out because he's just, I think, better equipped to help out Wasp, the hero. Moving on to my number 22, we have Mantis out of Drax's kit. A 2-cost ally with 2 thwart, 1 attack, 3 hit points, and the Guardian trait with the action of Exhaust Mantis and deal 1 damage to her, heal 3 damage from your identity. And it's important to know that her 1 attack comes with 2 consequential damage. So, I will not pretend to know an awful lot about Drax. I think that the links between Drax and Mantis are really pulling from the movies, from the MCU. I would not put Mantis as much of a space hero as I think the general population would put her. She is an Avenger. She was very much an Avenger for a very long time. I do think it's fair to say that to put her in space. She's an alien. There's no question about that. But I question whether she is the most thematically relevant to Drax. Because again, I feel like that connection is only built out of the MCU. Gameplay-wise, I think she's very strong because Drax wants to be attacked. He's going to be taking damage. And I think if you just have Mantis sitting there, dealing the damage to herself to heal up 3 damage, that could be completely undoing the villain phase altogether. Mantis is really good in that respect. I think that also makes her a very good sidekick ally. You suddenly can extend how long that goes on. And if you do need to flip down, obviously you're losing all of Drax's vengeance counters, but you can heal her back up. She can just continue to prolong how long Drax is going to be staying in hero form. I think sidekick is a very good boon for this pair. Playability wise, she's very playable. She only costs 2. I mean, like, how much more playable can you get? And overall, I would say that Drax is reasonably high in my rankings. I feel like he's in that zone where a lot of heroes get clustered together, middle 40% of my heroes list. And so, as a card, very strong for Drax. As a character, I might be a little bit more litigious about that. I would debate whether Mantis was the right choice. But overall, I think that she is a very strong number 22 on my list. Moving on to my number 21, we have Red Dagger out of Ms. Marvel's kit. A 3-cost ally with 2 thwart, 2 attack, 3 health, the Champion's trait, and an interrupt of when Red Dagger is defeated, spend 2 resources of different types, deal 2 damage to an enemy, and return Red Dagger to your hand. That's actually pretty cool. In terms of thematics, I think that he is... I think in terms of like superhero-wise, you could look at it and go, are there other champions that might fit better with Ms. Marvel? And sure, there's definitely been times when I have swapped out identity-specific allies and just made Carol from Spider-Woman's kit into her identity-specific ally. That's just a fun variant. But I would say, thematically, Red Dagger is going to be exclusively linked to Ms. Marvel, and I think that there is enough precedent. This was even before the show, so the fact that Red Dagger shows up in the show, Fantasy Flight called that. So I would say that is thematically good. Gameplay-wise, I am a little less impressed. I think that you get to bring the card back to your hand, which, that allows him to be repeatedly in play, and you might be able to use that 2 damage to defeat an enemy. That's great, but I just don't feel like I'm basing what I'm doing around the existence of Red Dagger. I'm so wrapped up in what event am I going to buy back, and I'm less worried about Red Dagger. So gameplay-wise, not strong. I do think that, surprisingly, I think that he is a good sidekick ally, because the part where he returns to your hand is completely dependent on him actually being defeated. So if you can just keep him in play, and you keep doing 2, whatever, he has the longevity. He's not the perfect sidekick ally, but I think he's actually a pretty good sidekick ally, despite the fact that he sort of reads like he shouldn't be. But again, that returning to your hand is not dependent on something. It's dependent on a point when his hit points have been depleted. If you give him more hit points, that just goes on longer and longer. And then if you happen to just have to drop sidekick to bring him back to your hand, at that point you're probably having Red Dagger be a part of the game for every turn after he gets played. Because if you then return him back to your hand and you play him out again, he's going to stick around for another turn or 2. So at that point, you've probably burned up most of the game, and Red Dagger has done his job. Playability-wise, I think that he's pretty playable, and I would also say that I rank Ms. Marvel as a pretty highly in my opinion. So overall, that brings him to number 21, and I actually am a little surprised. I don't think highly of Red Dagger, But when I really started to break it down by all my criteria, he almost cracked the top 20. Speaking of the top 20, let's talk about Rogue's ally, Gambit. So he is a 3-cost ally with 2/2 stats and 3 hit points. And the X-Men trait, Gambit enters play with 3 charge counters on him. And he has an interrupt of when Gambit attacks, remove 1 charge counter from him, deal 1 damage to an enemy. So overall, I do think that Gambit is a very thematic home run. I think that it's pretty hard to point to another character that has more of a link to Rogue than Gambit. And you're not picking Magneto, especially in the first wave. But thematic or gameplay-wise, I'm not that concerned with Gambit. He's not doing anything that is furthering what Rogue is trying to do, short of superpower adaptation to allow her to buy her own events back. Other than that, he's just a body. He's doing good work. He's probably breaking a tough here or there and clearing the area for Rogue to do her stuff. But at the end of the day, he's just attacking for 2 and dealing a damage and with 3 health. I think that the fact that you can prolong how long you use his charge counters by making him a sidekick, I think is a viable option. He's not the first person I would make into a sidekick, but I do think that if you're asking, is Gambit a good candidate for sidekick? I would say yes in a binary. And Rogue ranks pretty highly for me. I like her an awful lot, which is what ultimately brings Gambit to number 20. Next up, we are going to pretty much merge my number 18 and 19 together because we're talking about Malcom Randall out of Bishop's Hero Pack. They both are pretty much the exact same in terms of what I'm going to say about them, so let's just save ourselves the time. Malcom is a 3-cost ally with 1 thwart, 2 attack, 3 hit points, the temporal and X-Men traits, and the action of discard a resource card from your hand, ready Malcom. If that card had a printed physical icon, heal 1 damage from Malcom once per phase. And Randall is a 3-cost ally with 2 thwart, 1 attack, so flipped stats, 3 hit points, and temporal and X-Men again, with the action of discard a resource card from your hand, ready Randall. If that had a printed energy resource, heal 1 damage from Randall. I think that in terms of thematics, I get where they're coming from. They're trying to kind of make Bishop's Hero Pack, just a controlled or a vacuum. In terms of like a package, you're playing off his temporal stuff, and temporal is something that he's going to care about. It's all there. I see what they're going for. I do think that Bishop is so much more than Malcom and Randall, because in the comics, I don't believe that Malcom and Randall are really around that much, and Bishop's been around for like 30 years. I disagree with the thematics. I understand where they're coming from. I disagree with the thematics. Gameplay-wise, these are middle of the road, fairly strong, because you're going to have a lot of resource cards in your hand. So it's going to be pretty easy to hit the kicker of healing damage for them, which keeps them in play longer. At the same time, I can see how it's not perfect, because you kind of want those resource cards in your hand to do other things with, to heal up damage, to deal damage with his cannon or whatever it's called, Bishop's gun or Bishop's armor. You want the resource cards for other things, and it can be nice to definitely have an extra thwart or an extra attack, but at the same time, I have so many other things I'd like to do that I'm not factoring these two into what I'm doing when I'm playing Bishop, and I like Bishop a lot. They're both, I think, pretty reasonable sidekick allies. I think that they were the deck that started with sidekick. That's where the sidekick card came from, and I think that they're very well designed for that. They're reasonably playable. Actually, they're probably very, very playable, because Bishop can so easily have just a huge stacked up hand. And Bishop is... I'm really coming around on Bishop. I really like him now, and so they do get points for that. But at the end of the day, they're number 18, they're number 19, and they're interchangeable at this point. You could literally flip a coin, and one of them is going to outrank the other one, but they're the same card to me, so we don't even need to waste any more time on that. Next up at my number 17, we have a ally that I forget is an ally, because I think of her just as a support, and that is Annabelle Riggs, a 2-cost ally with 1 thwart, 1 attack, 2 hit points, and the civilian trait. With the alter ego action of Exhaust Annabelle Riggs, search the top 5 cards of your deck for a Valkyrie card and add it to your hand. Shuffle the rest back into your deck. I forget that she has this alter ego action. I forget it all the time, because I just think of her as Valkyries thwart for 1, then take an attack right to the chin. I don't have a lot to say about this. I think that if you were to really look at the A-Force or the Defenders teams that Valkyrie has been a part of, this version of Valkyrie has been a part of, I think you probably could find another hero that could be her ally. I do get it at the same time because Annabelle Riggs is kind of the Donald Blake to Valkyrie's Thor. This is the body she embodied for a while, and at some point they split up, which allows her to be the ally. At the same time, this is a hard ally because I thematically wishy-washy on her. Gameplay wise, I forget that she has this alter ego action, but when you can use it, it is helpful. It's just hard to go blind into a turn going, okay, on my turn, I'm going to look for a card, and then I'm going to switch to hero form and hopefully use that card. In terms of sidekick, I think that she actually is a fairly good sidekick ally in a very unique way, because I do think that if you are going to if you're basically going to preserve her life and use her only as a way to look for the top 5 cards for a Valkyrie card, and just you're going to alter ego every turn, every chance you have, you're switching so that you're basically using this ability every turn, I think that she is a very good ally for that. But at that point, she becomes a glorified support. She's just not even going to be used as a defender. She's not going to attack. She's not going to thwart for you. She's just going to stay as Annabelle Riggs, the Valkyrie event finder. I think that she is pretty playable. And the saving grace here, the reason why she ranks so highly, is because I happen to rank Valkyrie very highly. I am an unconventional person for that. I think Valkyrie is a really fun hero. She provides challenge, and so yeah, I'm always going to bleed Asgard, and so that's why Annabelle actually ranks so highly on this list, which you probably shouldn't. But I think that also just speaks to how much costing 2 over costing 4 means that you can outrank Lady Sif so easily, even though I like Thor more than I like Valkyrie. Next up, let's talk my number 16, which is T'Challa, out of Shuri Black Panther's kit. He is a 4-cost ally with 2 thwart, 2 attack, 3 hit points, with the Genius and Wakanda traits, and the Hero response, which goes onto both of his basic powers. After T'Challa uses a basic power, resolve the special ability on 1 Black Panther upgrade you control. So, thematically, I don't know that there is anybody other than T'Challa for Shuri to have as an identity-specific ally. Gameplay-wise, I think he is such a stronger ally than Shuri was for T'Challa. He is literally giving you access to your Black Panther upgrade abilities every time he does something. He's a great turn 1 ally to play out, because in your alter ego form, you get out your upgrade that costs you an exhaust, but then T'Challa comes down and then just uses whatever upgrade you just used first turn. And he's doing it with an attack for 2. I think he's a great sidekick ally. He's got the stats for it. He's giving you additional activations of your upgrades. Kudos, super great sidekick ally. Playability wise, I would say he's a little bit more difficult. He is occupying your entire turn. When you play him out, you are, like I said, that game plan of alter ego to go grab an upgrade, rest of your hand to play T'Challa is a strong one, but that is your entire turn. And I don't think very highly of Shuri right now, which I think is really all that's keeping T'Challa from being a top 10, top 5 here, ally in this list. If I just liked Shuri more, T'Challa would crack into that top 10, no question for me. I think he's a very strong ally. He's doing great things for his hero, and unfortunately, he actually falls at number 16. I think he probably deserves to be a little bit higher just on merits, but in terms of when he's going to make it into play, I don't like Shuri enough to have him be at the table enough. And unfortunately, that is just the downfall of T'Challa. Next up at my number 15, we have Betsy Braddock, aka Psylocke, out of Angel's Pack. A 3-cost ally with 1 thwart, 1 attack, 3 hit points, and the Psionic and X-Force traits, with the hero response of, after Psylocke attacks, if you are Angel, heal 1 damage from Psylocke. If you are Archangel, ready your hero. For Angel, I think this is the best pick. I think that Angel has a lot of other heroes he's interacted with. I think Psylocke is going to go down as the strongest candidate for this identity-specific ally role. Gameplay-wise, I think she is strong, but I don't base everything I'm doing with Angel around Psylocke. You might be basing what form you're going to be in, because I do think that prolonging her life by healing damage by being in angel form is not the worst thing in the world. You lose this if you are in your alter ego form. This doesn't matter. Obviously, it's a hero response. And if you're Archangel, I think this is really awesome. I think being able to just ready back up means that you can heal up, switch to Archangel, use Psylocke's ability, ready him up so you can make a heal and do all this stuff at the same time. I think that's really great. All the more reason why I think that she's a pretty good sidekick ally. Again, like I've said before, she's not the first person I would pick to be a sidekick, but I think that there is definitely the room to make her a sidekick ally. And I think that if you can bump up her other stats, which is something that leadership can do very easily, I think that she was all the better. She's a hero that I want to be attacking with for obvious reasons, and I want to give her extra health, and I want to go to alter ego so that I can heal her back up. Yeah, I think that she's just golden to be a sidekick ally. Playability wise, I think she's reasonably playable. Again, that 3 is always going to weigh on you a little bit, but at the same time, I never feel like I'm basing my entire turn around just getting Psylocke into play. I want her in play, and I want her to do good things. The only thing that's holding her back, and that just kind of like keeps her a couple of slots behind other places, is that I don't favor her as much as other heroes, and so she falls a little bit behind some of these more upset victories that we're going to be seeing in the next couple spots. But moving on to my number 14, we are looking at Redwing, a 2-cost ally out of Falcon's pack. He has 1 thwart, 1 attack, 2 hit points, and he has the Aerial, Avenger, and Bird traits. In the hero action of Exhaust Redwing, return him to your hand and discard the top card of the encounter deck. Choose to either deal X damage to an enemy or remove X threat from a scheme where X is the number of icons, star, or boost in the discarded card's boost area. So, depending on what version of Falcon you are aware of, Redwing is either a robot or an animal, and in this case he's an animal. I think that he is thematically perfect. You could say, well, why isn't this Steve Rogers? And that's fair, but I think that over the entire history of Falcon, he has enough history outside of just his affiliation with Captain America that Redwing is the correct choice here. Gameplay wise, he is, at least to me, he is core to Falcon's strategy. He is not an ally. He is an event that either deals damage or removes threat, being dependent on what is on the top of the encounter deck. He is my game plan. He is always going to be the first thing. I'm going to use my alter ego ability to go get him so that I can put him into play so that I can do what I need to do. But because he is a glorified event, he's not a good sidekick ally. So that does hurt him a little bit. I wish he cost 1 less, although I wish everything could cost 1 less and be great. But I have no problems with Redwing. I don't love Falcon, and that could change because Falcon's only been out for less than half a year, about 6 months. This is a card that could very easily crack the top 10, just like T'Challa. Give it time. All I need to do is like Falcon a little bit more, and Redwing is in the top 10. And I think he's a stellar ally, and I hope to play him more in the future. Continuing on the list, let's go to my number 13, which is out of Scarlet Witch's pack, Quicksilver. He is a 4-cost ally with 1 thwart, 2 attack, 4 hit points, the Avenger trait, and the action of Ready Quicksilver, limit once per phase. So this means that all of his stats are basically going to be condensed into, basically double for a turn. And that can be really, really helpful. In terms of thematics, he's, the person I would pick, especially within context of what we're talking about. Go back to what I said about Vision and how Vision, this could have been Vision's role, but I think that Quicksilver is a perfectly fine thematic choice, particularly when we're talking about Scarlet Witch in her Avenger era. Gameplay wise, I think he's very weak. He's not doing anything for Scarlet Witch. He's just a body. In fact, he's probably a hindrance because he costs 4. He is a very good candidate for sidekick because he can get multiple hits in every turn. He can thwart multiple times a turn. And I think that giving him more health is only making that more possible. So, yeah, I think he's a viable sidekick ally. In terms of cost, like I said, he kind of dominates your entire turn. You had to plan what you're doing with him because you're burning up most of your hand. But hopefully that means that you kind of had a dead hand anyway, if this is what you're choosing to do. And he skyrockets up this list because Scarlet Witch is like in my top 5. She's one of my favorite heroes in the entire game. I absolutely love her, which means that I see Quicksilver a lot, which is the reason why I have such strong opinions about him. He is kind of one of those upset picks here. He basically wins off the fact that Scarlet Witch is such a superb hero, which bumps him up all the way to number 13. Moving on to my number 12, and we are talking about Nick Fury out of Maria Hill's pack, which is a bit of a surprise. But okay, so Nick Fury is a 4-cost ally with 2 thwart, 2 attack, 3 hit points, has the shield trait, and the response of after Nick Fury uses a basic power, place 1 all-purpose counter on a shield support. Notably, does not need to be a shield support that you control, which is definitely part of the game plan that I have not leveraged because I have not had to cross over enough shield stuff in a game yet. But keep that in mind for multiplayer if you ever do. In terms of thematics, I think that for Maria Hill, he's the choice. They are very strongly linked. I'm not going to say that her entire history has rotated around Nick Fury. She's definitely had interactions with other heroes. But if you're gonna put out a box that has these two in it, they're the right choices for allies. Gameplay, he plays perfectly into this. He is expensive, so he does dominate your turn. But he's doing exactly what you want to be doing. He's putting all-purpose counters onto stuff. That's Maria Hill's whole game. I think that also makes him a strong sidekick ally because he's able to get out more and more of these every turn. And if you can just heal him up and get a couple extra activations out of him, all the better. I think that he's the platonic ideal of a Pacific ally in that respect. Playability wise, he is a little bit expensive. He's going to make it a little bit harder. And the thing that just holds Nick Fury back, because he could very well be in the top 5 here. I think he's such a well-designed ally and serves Maria Hill so well. I just don't like Maria Hill. I get what she's doing. She's a powerful hero, but she's kind of a boring hero to me. And so in the future, that could shift as my opinions shift on her. But for right now, she's just not favorable to me, and that leaves Nick Fury at number 12. All right, number 11, falling just short of the top 10, is Black Widow out of Winter Soldier's pack. So I think that thematically, it didn't feel right at first, and I don't remember what I said about Winter Soldier when I talked about him for Black Widow, but at first I was like, I don't know that these two really kind of work together. But then as I looked into their history, they have a very strong history. So thematically, I think that is a thematic win. Gameplay-wise, I think that Black Widow does so much more for Winter Soldier than Winter Soldier does for Black Widow. I didn't even read the card, I'm sorry. So she is a 3-cost ally with 2 thwart, 2 attack, 3 hit points, and the shield and spy traits. After you play Black Widow from your hand, return an attack event from your discard pile to your hand. She factors into exactly what I want to be doing so well. She is definitely making it so that I can rebuy the events I want to play. Hopefully I can use my mechanical arm to even maybe play them out that same turn. That's a bit of a stretch, but I do think that being able to set up your next turn with what attack event you're going to do. Maybe you do your punch for 7 or 8, then next turn you're going to be able to do 7 or 8 again. I think that she gives consistency to Winter Soldier that is very much appreciated. That said, I don't think she's a good candidate for sidekick. I want to have her come into play, do her thing, get shuffled back into the deck. She's very playable. He has a resource generator in his kit. I think that 3 is a lot more manageable for him than it might be with some other heroes. And I happen to like Winter Soldier a lot. For a hero that's pretty new, I rank him pretty highly. And so he definitely gets a lot of credit there. And so at the end of the day, that's what results in Black Widow being my number 11. Now, moving on to the top 10. let's talk about Outlaw from Domino's Hero Pack. She is a 3-cost ally with 1 thwart, 1 attack, 3 hit points. She has the Outlaw and Posse traits. She has toughness and the interrupt ability of when Outlaw attacks, discard the top card of your deck. Outlaw gets +1 attack for each resource icon discarded this way. And just as a reminder, Domino has the ability where if you discard a wild resource, you count that twice. So she can be very, very strong. She does not outrank the other ally, which we will get to in just a few minutes. But Outlaw, I think, is thematically so-so. I don't know that I want to have Domino be paired with Cable. I think that the choice in that box to not have the 2 heroes be allies to each other was wise. There is a part of me that questions if you could have found someone better for Domino. Whether that be Wolverine, whether that be Deadpool, whether that be Cable. I think that linking her in with the Posse was a cool like sub-archetype for her, just not the most thematically resonant thing for me. Gameplay-wise, I think that she is not necessarily... I'm not basing my turn around what I can do with Outlaw, but I'm definitely... she's part of the decision process because you can put cards from your hand back on top of your deck. That way you can set up Outlaw, but also you can do the same thing to set up the way that you use your events or use your pistols or use your probability field. She's a good part of the core of what Domino's trying to do. I think that Domino's kit is very well focused, very lean, very focused on what she's trying to do, and Outlaw is just a very good part of that. That said, I think that she is a very good sidekick ally. Domino comes with 2 allies. I think both of them are pretty viable for being sidekicks in their own different ways, especially because you have things like Jackpot. I don't know that I jackpot for allies very often, but sometimes you jackpot just to get out allies. And Domino ranks so highly for me that Outlaw was always going to be destined for the top 10. And she barely made it, but she is in the top 10. Next up, we are going all the way back to the core set with my number 9, and that is Black Cat, a 2-cost ally with 1 thwart, 1 attack, and 2 hit points. She has the Hero for Hire trait, which is actually now relevant in the Civil War age, and the forced response of after you play Black Cat, discard the top 2 cards of your deck, add each card with a printed mental resource discarded this way to your hand, and importantly, her 1 attack does not have consequential damage. So that is something that they put all the way back in the core set, and we don't see that often, is definitely something to keep note of. I struggle to think of a better ally for Spider-Man. I think that she is thematically very strong in terms of like what you could pair, who you could pair Spider-Man with. I think Black Cat is a very good candidate. I think that she does a reasonable amount for your game plan. The fact that she doesn't take consequential damage means that you're able to keep getting 1 damage in over and over again. And I think the fact that she can get you cards into your hand. Now, granted, that could be very deck dependent. Are you playing a deck that has a lot of mental resources in it? Black Cat's only going to get stronger. But that does also mean that you can really favor cards with printed mental resources on them over other stuff. And I think that overall, that makes her gameplay-wise, she's got a lot of things going for her. As I said before, I think that her ability to have no consequential damage on her attacks because you just doesn't have a conscience does make her a really good sidekick ally. But basically double her health, allow her to attack over and over again as much as you want, thwart when you need it. I think that she's a stellar ally for being sidekick. She's very playable. She only costs 2. And I like Spider-Man. I don't like him a whole lot, but I like him enough. I like Spider-Man enough that raises the profile of Black Cat up considerably. Moving on to my number 8, let's talk about Gamora. A 3-cost ally with 2 thwart, 2 attack, 3 hit points. She has the Guardian trait, and the response of after you play Gamora, choose a technique upgrade you control and resolve its special ability. So like we've seen with like T'Challa, this is great because the techniques that Nebula has, because she's out of the Nebula's pack, are all paying off when you are in hero form at the top of your turn. All your techniques go off. The ability to get an extra use out of those techniques, the ability to do that while you are in alter ego, so great. Thematically, top tier. This is the exact person I would pick to be the identity specific ally for Gamora, or for Nebula. She plays into the game plan great. She's doing exactly what you would want to be doing. I don't think she's a good candidate for sidekick, but at the end of the day, she has so much more going for her. I like Nebula a lot. I'm probably alone in that. Nebula is definitely kind of cordoned off to almost exclusively needing to be in Justice to some degree because you need to go to Alter Ego so much, but at the same time, she is just a hero that I enjoy more than a lot of other heroes. So that just raises Gamora's profile up even more. Next up, let's talk about my number 7, and that is out of Captain Marvel's kit, and that is Spider-Woman. She is a 3-cost ally with 2 thwart, 2 attack, 2 hit points, the Avenger and Spy traits, and the response of after Spider-Woman enters play, confuse the villain. So thematically, I think I said this when I was talking about the Captain Marvel ally. I was a little bit confused by this at first, especially when I first got into the game, and I was like, these are the iconic allies to these characters. But once I really looked into the history and understood just how interlinked Captain Marvel and Spider-Woman are, I was like, this is thematically a home run. Gameplay-wise, I'm not saying that this is furthering what Carol wants to do, but Carol does want to go to Alter Ego a lot. Out of the core set heroes, I guess there's She-Hulk, but out of the core set heroes, I would say that She-Hulk and Captain Marvel are kind of neck and neck for who wants to be going to Alter Ego the most, because she can benefit from it so much. So being able to confuse the villain is helping with the furthering what you're trying to do with Captain Marvel. I think that it's enough that you can reasonably say that you are planning your turn around, I'm going to get Spider-Woman out, and that's going to further what I'm trying to do. You are basing your turn around that. She is the rare instance of a good sidekick ally that doesn't really do anything by just being in play. I think she comes down, she's able to just do that 2 thwart, 2 attack over and over again, and what really makes her a good sidekick ally is the fact that Carol wants to go to Alter Ego, which means you're probably going to heal back some damage on Jessica and just be able to have her around more and just be that consistency. If it wasn't for that, if Carol wasn't a hero that wanted to go to Alter Ego as much as she does, I think that it would take away from the ability for Spider-Woman to be a good sidekick ally. That said, I really think very highly of Captain Marvel, so that just elevates Spider-Woman to my number 7. All right, and turning the corner to my number 6, let's talk about Maria Hill, a 3-cost ally out of the Nick Fury pack. She has 2 thwart, 1 attack, 3 hit points, and the shield trait with the interrupt of when Maria Hill thwarts, place the removed threat on your suit form upgrade. And just for the layman, Nick Fury has a suit form upgrade that can collect the threat, and you can use that threat on one of its sides, on the assault suit side, to basically take attacks and bump them up by as much as 3. Nick Fury is very much built around the idea of handling threat as much as possible, and Maria Hill is only furthering that plan. Thematically, home run. Gameplay wise, she is doing exactly what I want. I want to get her into play. I want her to be putting 2 threat onto my suit upgrade, and that also means that I can then follow that up with youth thwart, and then I make an attack for my base plus 2 at minimum. That is great. She's a good sidekick ally. She's the kind of ally that I want to keep in play as long as possible. The only thing holding her back, the only thing kind of keeping her out of the top 5 is just the fact that Nick Fury is new. I don't rank him as highly as other heroes. And at the end of the day, we take a great ally all the way up to number 6, which I still think is very respectable. Moving on to my number 5, we have Diamondback out of Domino's Hero Pack. A 2-cost ally with 1 thwart, 1 attack, 2 hit points, the posse trait, and the action of exhaust. Diamondback, deal 1 damage to her and discard the top card of your deck. Deal 1 damage to each enemy for each resource icon discarded this way. Again, Domino has the ability that if you discard a wild resource off the top of your deck, you count that twice. So this means you can deal damage to her. You exhaust, deal 1 damage to her, deal 2 damage to every enemy in play. Thematically, again, like I talked about with Outlaw, I'm not going to rank Diamondback and Domino as highly. It's not a thematic home run for me, but I do think that I can see where the connections are. Gameplay wise, she is doing a lot of really good work. She is clearing the way. She can deal a tremendous amount of damage really, really easily. You're setting up the top of your deck. She is very much factoring into what you want to do. I am more likely to build my turn around Diamondback than I am Outlaw, which only helps to kind of push her above Outlaw in that respect. So many slots. She's a good sidekick ally. I want to put sidekick on her because that only means that I get to do what she's doing over and over again. And Domino is not a hero that I want to go to Alter Ego with a lot, but when I do, and I put sidekick on a Diamondback, it only makes things better. Playability wise, great. She only costs 2, easy to do. And again, Domino is one of my favorite heroes, so Diamondback was going to just rocket up this list, no question. And yeah, that's why she falls at my number 5. Moving on to my number 4, we are looking at Scott Summers, aka Cyclops, out of Phoenix Hero Pack. So he is a 3-cost ally with 2 thwart, 2 attack, 3 hit points, and the X-Men trait, and the response of after Cyclops enters play, place 2 power counters on the Phoenix Force, which is a permanent, double-sided permanent that Phoenix has that can basically have her be contained versus unleashed form. I'm blanking on what the actual contained form is. Regressed. I don't remember what it's called, but basically it takes a Phoenix from her just Jean Grey form into Dark Phoenix mode. And once you use up all the power counters. It's also up on screen. And then the Force Interrupt of when Cyclops leaves play, remove 2 power counters from the Phoenix Force. So Cyclops thematically is just sort of like keeping Phoenix in check. If she's already unleashed, all the better. And yeah, this is a card that definitely factors into what you're trying to do. Thematically, perfect. For Jean Grey, I don't think there is a better ally for her. I suppose you could say Storm. There's definitely is the team up card between the two of them, and I do favor that highly. But I think in terms of if you're talking about her number 1, it's going to be Cyclops. Gameplay wise, I've already talked about how Cyclops definitely plays into what Jean Grey's trying to do. You can use a power counter to generate a wild resource once per turn. That also helps. Yeah, this is the kind of card that just allows Phoenix to stay in hero form as long as possible, because he can just be a good chump blocker. He can just take some damage for you. He is very much on the border of sidekick. I can definitely see the case for him. Comes down, sticks around longer, does his 2/2 stuff. On a different day, I would say, no, I just want him to go. But I think that also depends on the build. If you keep him in play, that means you want those 2 power counters. If you want him to go so that you can basically get your use out of them and then just drop him so that the additional power counters drop off and she goes into unleashed form. Like, he is so key to what she's trying to do that his viability as a sidekick ally is completely dependent on what build you're doing. But if you're building towards that, in the moment you can decide, do I want to go down the sidekick route here, or do I want him to just be manipulating power counters? And that's something that you have to make that call in the moment. I do like Phoenix a lot. She is in my top 10, I think, maybe top 12. But yeah, I love her so much, and that's why Cyclops is my number 4, and very respectable. I'm not even gonna try to brush that off. He is a very good ally in this game. Moving on to my number 3, and we have Nebula out of Gamora's pack. She is a 2-cost ally with 2 thwart, 2 attack, 2 hit points, Guardian traded, and the response of after Nebula enters play, search your deck for an attack or thwart event and add it to your hand, shuffle your deck. So thematically, perfect. Gameplay wise, perfect. She's doing exactly what I want to do. Yeah, Gamora wants you to be making 1 attack and 1 thwart event every turn, and Nebula is contributing to that. Her cost is weighted that way. It's going to allow you to play her and still play whatever event you went and grabbed, although she does have 0 cost events, so in some ways her cost doesn't matter. The only thing I can really say against Nebula is the fact that she's not a good sidekick ally. I want her to go to the discard pile so that I can, I wanted to use her as a chump blocker, but also I want her to just go to the discard pile so that I can shuffle her back in and I can do this all over again. And the thing is, I've talked very highly of the sidekick archetype because it is an archetype that I care about, and it is so ally dependent, but that doesn't necessarily make you a bad ally if you're just not part of this archetype. But at the same time, I like the archetype, so we're going to do that. I love Gamora. I think she is such a great hero. She is in that top 10 for me. And so, yeah, very easily, it was easy for, and so it was no question Nebula was going to rank very highly on this list. And I am honored to have her as my number 3. And turning the corner to my number 2, out of the Deadpool pack, we have Cable. A 3-cost ally with 1 thwart and 2 attack, 3 hit points, psionic and X-Force traded, and Cable gets +1 thwart, +1 attack for each acceleration token on the main scheme to a maximum of +3 thwart, +3 attack. There was an entire comic book series called Cable and Deadpool, so thematically these two are very linked. Gameplay-wise, he is not everything I'm doing with Deadpool, but he is definitely an ally that I am going to be factoring into how I play the game. When he's in my hand, I'm thinking about how I'm going to get him into play and how I'm going to use him to the best of my ability. I think he is an incredible sidekick ally. He's my favorite sidekick ally. I think if you're being impartial, there are other allies that I will not scoff anybody for saying that they are the platonic ideal of a sidekick ally. To me, Cable is my platonic idea of a sidekick ally. He's very playable. Deadpool has no problem getting him into play. His curve is so low, it's not a problem. And Deadpool is in my top 10. He's probably very close to my top 5 heroes. So it's no question that Cable is going to end up at my number 2. And if anybody's keeping track, they already know what my number 1 is. And it was a little bit surprising. At the same time, it wasn't surprising because she's pretty awesome. And that is Honey Badger. Honey Badger is a 2-cost ally, 1 thwart, 1 attack, 2 hit points, X-Men traded. Hero response after Honey Badger takes any amount of damage, ready X23. In a different era, I would not understand how this character became so strongly linked with X23. But having looked into the comics, having understood what we're talking about, yeah, this is a thematic home run. Gameplay-wise, this is one of those allies that the entire hero pack is built around. You want Honey Badger in play. You are given multiple ways to get Honey Badger into play right in the kit. Honey Badger is core to what Laura is trying to do. And like I said again, her entire her hero card is built around just taking advantage of Honey Badger. Obviously, her taking any amount of damage to ready up X23 is great, but you don't have a lot of leeway with that because she only has 2 hit points. That said, you can always get her back, and you can also make her a sidekick. She's a very good sidekick ally. I think X23 is a stellar hero, and she ranks up very, very highly. She's in my top 10. She is like my ideal Justice hero. I don't know if that's changed, but for a long time she's been my go-to Justice hero, and I think that's probably still true. Although I'd like to revisit that list that I did last year in late 2024, and I'd like to reinspect it now. But yes, Honey Badger is no question my favorite ally in the game amongst all these criteria. If I was just to take out a lot of the numbers, Cable would probably be my top. But yeah, we had a lot of I would definitely say we also have a lot of contested spots here because there's a lot of really good allies that when you just start to break it down, in a vacuum, they're great, but in the context of their hero, they might not necessarily be as good. But that is my list. We are now like 2.5 hours in. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope that you got out of this whatever you were looking for. And yeah, we will definitely do another one of these epic lists sometime in the future. But now I really want to rest my voice, and I will talk to you all later. Have a great day. You are doing great. Keep it up.